Hello and welcome to this What's New video for the new software release 8.87. We are very excited to share this with you. We have done a lot of work over this last development cycle, so if you want to see the full changes over the last cycle, please make sure to review the release notes that are distributed with your installer and your documentation folder. This video is just designed to cover the major highlights and the new items that might need a little bit of retraining or a little bit of time for you to familiarize yourself with so you know the new functionality of the system. We'll start off with general items that impact both inspection and reverse engineering workflows, and then we'll move into our inspection items, and then we'll close out with our reverse engineering items, just to help you navigate this a little bit more easily. So starting off with our first general item, and this is a pretty major one, we have retooled our layer navigator down here, right at the bottom of the screen. You were seeing now we have layer selectors for our active Gerber, our monochrome and color raster active layers, as well as our reference Gerber and reference monochrome and color raster. It used to be the case that whenever you wanted to change which layer you were working on, you actually had to exit the layer, and then reselect your new layer configuration and go in. And now we've made it so you don't have to do that anymore. You can independently toggle all of these on the fly. So let's say I'm done working with circuit layer 1 and I want to go to circuit layer 2. Great, I can just select circuit layer 2 from my drop down here and then do the same for your raster. Now do note that your monochrome and color raster are selected independently from your Gerber file. So, for instance, don't be confused if you select a different circuit layer and these things don't match. You've got to go through and make sure to select the corresponding raster layer as well to make sure everything's synced up. And of course, same thing for the reference layers if I'd like to have a different reference layer displayed. So we hope you enjoyed that new function. We found it's just a nice way to save time so you don't have to escape and go back in periodically when you're either working on or inspecting different layers in a multi-layer job. Next major function we have that has changed is we've implemented a JPEG compression algorithm. So if I go to File, Export, I can actually export, go to Color Raster, I can export JPEGs. So if I go to Color Raster Output, now I can do a JPEG compression, and of course, like usual, I select the file name and then can select which layers I'd like to export and go from there. Now that works for a couple different functions. That is for the file, export, color raster output function, as well as the inspection output called add error locations to color image and export as JPEG. Both of those will use that new JPEG compression algorithm. The nice thing is it really does preserve the full image size and most of the image, really the full image resolution, and it does sacrifice some quality. But for instance, the total number of the total amount of data in this job is 3.6 gigs. I think each layer might be like 200-300 megabytes. If I were to export this to a JPEG, it might be more around 50-25 megabytes, something like that. So it really allows you to have a much smaller file size to deal with when communicating large images. And again, retaining most of the quality. So we're excited about that one. Pretty simple one, but something that's nice to have is it used to be the case that this function, the fine overlap on raster function, and this sort of rotates your raster, and it's not fine overlap on raster, sorry, fine overlap of raster on Gerber. So what it does is it rotates and shifts the raster image to match a Gerber image. Now, you're not doing this all the time in reverse engineering workflows, but certainly in inspection, it's a very regularly used function, and it can be nice in reverse engineering to just conform everything to layer 1. It used to be the case that only worked on layer 1. We have enhanced that function to work on any layer. So anytime you want to run this fine overlap of raster on Gerber function, you can run it from whatever layer you'd like. And then lastly, we've upgraded the pan function so that now when you press your middle mouse button, you get this little arrow, and you can pan around the image, kind of like you do with like an Adobe PDF file or something. It just works as like the little hand, and it grabs your image to pan around. So again, you can do that by either depressing the mouse, the middle mouse button or the scroll wheel, or by going to zoom pan. Of course, that's a little weird because then you can't unselect it. You just have to hit escape. So the best way is just hit the middle mouse button. So that wraps up our general enhancement items. Getting into the inspection side of things, nothing really to demonstrate here. I just want to talk about that we have enhanced scan and inspect same part a great deal. It used to be the case that when this function is run, it would scan a given area on the scanner, perform a given color separation, and then perform an inspection after doing a Gerber rubber overlap. So it would actually rubber overlap the Gerber to match the raster image. That was required in order for us to have good alignment, but it does obviously cause some changes to the Gerber file, which is not ideal in many inspection scenarios. So we have adjusted that so that now we will rubber overlap the raster by default. So what that means is we will adjust the scanned raster image to align to the Gerber image and then perform the inspection. You can change it back to Gerber. Just let us know. We can switch the configuration for you. Either configuration is available. That rubber overlap is required for this function because it's so automated, because literally you pop something in a given position on the scanner and it does the scanning and the color separating, the inspecting and everything. So we do need to have a rubber overlap function, but now it's defaulted to raster rubber overlap, and of course we can select Gerber if you'd like. Additionally, we now have the ability to support an aperture area check inspection for the scan and inspect same part again function, as well as using gray separation in addition to the normal color separation. So there's a number of different options available to you if you want to use that function to really expedite the inspection process. The next thing is we have added the display of error crosses underneath a reference designator. So let me see, I think I have a stencil here. Yeah. So I've got this stencil file, and it does. I do need to have an assembly file, so I've got that imported as well and aligned. And then basically, if I perform an inspection, and let me just sort of make an error here. I'm going to make this error right there. If I perform some sort of inspection, let's inspect in window. Let's do 3.8 mils. Cool. If I perform some sort of inspection and an error cross is generated underneath a component centroid location, the software will now report that reference designator both on the status line down here and then also when I generate a report. So if I do create a report, pull that up, you can see that we not only export the error number, X and Y coordinates, we also now report that reference designator from that assembly file. Again, we do need that centroid file to be loaded and aligned in the software, but that is new as well. And then, of course, lastly, something we mentioned already, for color and gray images, we now have the ability to add error locations to a color image and export as a JPEG. It used to be a bitmap, which means it used to be the exact same size as the file that you scanned, which, as you probably know, can be kind of problematic if that file is like 700 megabytes. So now it'll be just a handful of megabytes, 15, 20 max, and it'll be much... it'll still retain all that image quality, but it'll just be much smaller. So now moving on to the reverse engineering related enhancements. Let's go ahead and go back out. The first one we're excited to share with you is our contour and fill around Gerber function. And let me go to a mask here. So I'm going to assume some sort of familiarity with our ground plane and our power plane generation workflows. And right now, let me reset all inspected areas just to get those out of the way. Turn off error crosses. Okay. So right now, the way that we do that is we create a mask layer And you know, we use our pad locations. We might swell them to make them a little bit bigger. And we create a mask layer that looks something like this. Let me bring up my corresponding raster just so that we can see. Something like this, so that we have a template in order to create a copper layer, something like this, right? So this gives us a nice clean copper layer like that. And of course the reason why we do that is boards don't have great registration. The color image is not great, because the copper isn't great. And so you don't want to actually create the plain layer from the color image. You want to create it from something more perfect, which is your pad locations that you've already programmed. So we develop a mask like this, and then in the traditional method, we go through Convert Plus to create a fill layer. Now, you're still going to need to do that if you want something like this. If you want a sophisticated hatch fill, or if you want to have a lot of control over the track size within your fill, then you're still going to need to go through Convert Plus to do that. But if you just want a simple fill, like this area, I just want to fill it, then all you need to do is create an external window, right? And not an actual, like a ScanCAD drawn window, but like a Gerber window. It doesn't have to be a rectangle, it just needs to be an enclosed Gerber shape delineating the outer extents. And then within that, create your mask. So once you have those two things in place on the active layer, all you need to do is go to Vectorize, Contour and Fill around Gerber, and we will use that in order to create a fill layer. And then you can use this as that fill in order to finish out your plane. Obviously, you need to go back into your original plane layer with your smaller original pad sizes, merge those two, add your thermals, and then you're done. But this saves you a round trip to Convert Plus if you're dealing with more simple types of fills that are just solid fills. It does a great job and just makes it all that easier. So we're excited about that. Next thing let's talk about is we added a button on the bottom when you're working on component placement, when you're working on your assembly file. Now you can just toggle the different sides, so all top and bottom components, only top and only bottom. And again, right there on the status line, just helping you to navigate that a little bit more easily. And then the last thing that we've done that I want to talk about here, and again, remember, check your release notes. There's a huge amount of items that have been enhanced in the software. I just don't want to make this video super bloated. But the thing that I want to talk about here is that we have enhanced the track size. So, or not track size, but the track display. And the way that we've done that is we've added these sort of guide shapes around the outside. And this is the default display. It consists of two different squares, one rotated at 0 degrees, one rotated at 45 degrees. And this really, really helps when you're drawing tracks or creating contours, because you don't have to sort of pretend anymore. You don't have to guess what the right position is in order to change angles. So for instance, if I want to catch this orthogonal line here, all I need to do is line up that top diagonal angle of my guide and then go, and it's perfectly aligned. Now again, I need to align that vertical angle on my cursor and go. And so it just makes manually drawing tracks when you need to do that significantly easier. Review the help entry for this function. I think it's under like the basics, and it's called track cursor or something. But review the help entry because there's a whole bunch of different shapes that we've created. This is just the default, but there are other configurations available to you if you would like to explore them. And I think that wraps up all the items I wanted to talk about during this video. So thank you again for making it through the video. Again, we'll update the portal with new workflows based on these new functions, and we always would love to hear your feedback on new function ideas and new ways to use the software. And thank you very much for continuing to be part of the ScanCAD community, and have a great day.